Okay, let's get to it. Roll up, everybody, gather, come and join. One man went to mow that thing again that happens around about this time of the day. It is happening on a Sunday afternoon, so come spend just a short while with me. Usually a shorter session, the afternoon sessions. So come spend that afternoon session with me. You know the routine, so you should be here already. One man went to mow, the eagle has landed.
Only water. Water. Only water. Where they see ma. Water. 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 Only water. Where they see ma. Hapa o naido. Hapa o naido. Hapa you don't come o. Hapa o naido. Oro kẹ̀kẹ́ ẹlẹ́mù yé o. Ilé sọ́dí kẹ̀kẹ́ ẹlẹ́mù rẹ o. Bobby master kẹ̀kẹ́ ẹlẹ́mù rẹ o. Chief Faila ti kẹ̀kẹ́ ẹlẹ́mù rẹ o. Eruku lẹ̀lẹ̀ ẹlẹ́mù dé. Eruku lẹ̀lẹ̀ ẹgbẹ́ ẹlẹ́mù dòdò jàre o. Eruku lẹ̀lẹ̀ Ghana ti dé ẹgbẹ́ bọ́ọ̀dì o. Ọmọ ẹlẹ́yẹ ẹ̀yẹ o ó dilé o. Odúyẹ̀lá ẹ̀yẹ o ó dilé o. Petrosonama ẹ̀yẹ o ó dilé o. Petrosodúnkẹ́ ẹ̀yẹ rẹ̀ ó dilé o. Ẹlẹ́kọ̀ ọ̀run mú ìní o. Àkùkọ ọ̀run méjìkọ. Ikú kò ní ríwà gbéṣe o.
And there we are, Iku Koniriwagbeshe, the care guide. So, Iku Koniriwagbeshe, as our guys, I bring you this. Atiku at 75, the story of my life. So, we'll be spending the bulk of this session just doing essentially a profile analysis of the one of the leading candidates that is likely to succeed the present incumbent in the Nigerian first seat. So Atiku Abubakar, to celebrate his 75th birthday, has released what he's describing as his life. So we shall explore that life with him and for him. So that is where the bulk of this session will be spent, but not all of the session will be spent on that. EFCC operatives invade Benga Daniels Conference Hotel, strip, rob, and torture guests. So this is now something that is a recurring decimal, something that we're seeing fairly regularly now with with the EFCC just launching into establishments, especially hotels and guest house, and brutalizing residents there. Often and in most instances without a warrant to facilitate that, and I'm not sure that any warrant would facilitate that. So that imperious abuse of power. This is something though we actually see mainly in the southern regions. So they go to the southern regions to vest upon the space. This is part of the intimidation that is going on in Nigeria, and this is part of the Fulanization agenda. They're keeping us so busy, just fighting to live, that we cannot then pay attention to the other numerous financial and other atrocities that they are committing. So Gbenga Daniel, the latest now person that has fallen foul of the EFCC. EFCC operatives invade Gbenga Daniel's conference hotel, strip, rob, and torture guests. So quite what has led to that we'll find out in the fullness of. So just a few things to find out in the fullness of. But before we get to the fullness of anything, we come in via how we traditionally come in, which is via the Eastern Quarters, another Python dance.
Do I fall? O Mary, o Nindizu, o Niroya, Abakare, Mama Daora, Una Pori Mary Nandi, Nandi win the war. Python dance one, Python dance two, now Python dance three. Una Pori Mary Nandi, Nandi win the war. Python dance one, Python dance two. Na Python dance three. Una pori meri nande. Nande bo onye du aimo. O meri wo nilizu ngiro ya. Abakare mamanda ora. Una pori meri nande. Nande win the war. Python dance one, Python dance two. Na Python dance three. Una poli meri Nandi. Nandi win the war. Python dance one, Python dance two. Na Python dance three. Una poli meri Nandi. Nandi win the war. Python dance one, Python dance two. Na Python dance three. Una poli meri Nandi. Nandi win the war. Python dance one, Python dance two. Na Python dance three. Una poli meri Nandi. Nandi win the war. Python dance one, Python dance two, and Python dance three. Una poli meri Nandi.
And there you are, Nnamdi Mati Winewo, Python dance, Python dance. Apologies for the awkwardness of the camera. I'm trying to repoint it or readjust it, but I can't quite find the setting, but I hope it will suffice, and it will have to suffice. So the camera suffices for this instance, as guys I bring you this. So Atiku at 75, the story of my life. So an account from the man himself. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar marked his 75th birthday on the 25th of November 2021. Below is a story he narrates about his background. So this is Atiku now speaking about himself. I was born on November the 25th, 1946 in Jada, Adamawa State, Nigeria. I was named after my paternal grandfather, Atiku Abdul Kadir. It was the practice amongst the Fulani people to name their first sons after their paternal grandfather. My grandfather, Atiku, came originally from Wano in Sokoto State. There, he had met and befriended Ado Usman, a Fulani nobleman from what is now known as Adamawa State. My grandfather decided to accompany his new friend back to his hometown of Adamawa. They settled in Kojoli, a small village in Jada local government council of Adamawa State. My grandfather farmed, kept livestock, and raised a family. He married a local girl in Kojoli and gave birth to my father, Gaba Atiku Abdul Kadir. He was their only child. My father was an itinerant trader who traveled from one market to another selling imitation jewelry, caps, needles, potash, kola nuts, and other knickknacks, which he ferried around on the back of his donkey. He also kept livestock and cultivated guinea corn, maize, and groundnuts. When it was time for him to marry, my father chose a young girl from a nearby Jada town whose parents had migrated from Dutse, now the capital of Jigawa State. My mother, Aisha Kande, was born in Jada. Both my father and paternal grandfather were learned men. They gave free Islamic classes to adults and young people in Kojoli during their spare time. As a young boy growing up in Kojoli, my parents doted on me. They tried their best to provide for me and to ensure that I grew up in a wholesome environment of love and spirituality. My father saw me as a rare gift, a child of destiny. My parents tried unsuccessfully to have more children. So now here is the going to school bit. Going to school, my father, Gaba Atiku Abdul was fond of me. He wanted me to become an Islamic scholar, headsman, farmer, and trader just like him. He was a deeply religious man who was suspicious of Western education, which he believed could corrupt the impressionable minds of young people. My father did not want me to go to school. He tried to hide me from the prying eyes of native authority officials who had embarked on a compulsory mass literacy campaign in the region. My father soon discovered that he could not resist the wind of change that was blowing through the area at the time. My mother's oldest brother, Kuwa Ali, who had received a little education through adult literacy classes, registered me at Jada Primary School in January 1954 as Atiku Kojoli. For trying to stop me from going to school, my father was arrested. Charged to an Al-Kili, charged to an Al-Kili court, and fined 10 shillings. He refused to pay the fine. He said he had no money. He spent a few days in jail until my maternal grandmother, who made local soap for sale in the community, raised the money to pay the fine, and my father was released to her. But my father was not a happy man. He was sad and angry that his only child had been taken away from him to be exposed to a strange world. He saw Western education as a threat to their cherished values and way of life. So his father's death, now we're going to. 3 years after I started school, tragedy struck in December 1957. I was then 11 years old. I was just about to begin senior primary school in Jada as a boarding pupil. My father drowned whilst trying to cross a small river known as Mayo Choncha, on the outskirts of Twango, a neighboring town. The river was in high tide following a heavy rainfall. My father's body was recovered the following day and buried in Tango according to Islamic rites. He was less than 40 years old when he died. I built an Islamic primary school at his burial site years later to immortalize him. He was a simple, hardworking, kind, honest, and God fearing man. I miss him a lot. After my father's death, the task of raising me fell on my mother, Kande, and her childless sister, Azumi, as well as my father's extended family members in Kojoli. Although people were generally kind and caring towards me, it was difficult for relatives to fill the vacuum left by my father. As such, I was often sad and lonely. My father's death pained me greatly. I resolved to work hard, remain focused, and be successful in life to make my father proud. I was sure that he was somewhere watching over me. I did not want to disappoint him. I wish my father lived long enough to see the benefits of Western education in my life. So the next subsection, Kaduna, Kano, and Zaria. After completing my primary school in Jada in 1960, I was admitted into Adamawa Provisional Secondary School in Yola. I joined 59 other young boys from Adamawa and beyond in January 1961 to begin a 5-year high school journey. The school's motto is Tido Yo Dado, a Fulani uh, a Fulani saying for endurance is success. It remained our daily. It reminded us daily that success in life would only come to those who worked hard and persevered. Adamawa Provisional Secondary School, like others in the region, belonged to the second category of post-primary institutions in northern Nigeria. The most prestigious schools were the government colleges in Zaria and Kefi. Pupils who excelled in the entrance examination went to the government colleges. Those who did reasonably well went to the provisional secondary schools. Average students went to craft schools in various divisions, and those who failed the examination were sent to farm centers which were established in all the districts. It was a good system which took care of everyone irrespective of his or her level of intelligence. When I was 15, I spent my school holidays at home working as a clerk in Ganye Native Authority. My boss was Adamu Chiroma, the then district officer. From my holiday job earnings, I bought a house for my mother in Ganye, the headquarters of the local government council. The thatched mud bungalow had 2 rooms, plus a kitchen and a bathroom. It cost me about £9 sterling. My mother was very happy and proud of me. I had saved her from homelessness after her older brother sold the family house in Jeddah without her knowledge. So now here comes the part now serving in customs. So there is the next subsection, serving in the customs. Before completing my diploma in law program in June 1969, a team from the Federal Civil Service Commission came on a recruitment drive to the university. By chance, one of the interviewers found in my file a report that I had once found, a report that I had once been found suitable to join the police force and had in fact received some training in 1966. This information was brought to the attention of the chairman of the interview panel, who promptly ruled, okay, you go to the Department of Customs and Excise. That was how I joined the Department of Customs and Excise in June 1969. The invisible hand that always shaped my life had once again steered me towards my destiny. After my training at the Police College in Ikeja, Lagos, and at the Customs Training School in Ebutemeta in Lagos, I was posted to Idi Iroko border station. My colleagues and I were tasked with collecting duties on imported and exported goods, stopping the entry and exit of banned items, and arresting and prosecuting smugglers. I was posted in 1972 to Ikeja Airport in Lagos and later to Apapa Port in Lagos. I saw customs not as a punitive institution, but as a way of making money for the government. Instead of seizing goods and extorting money from their owners, I made money for the government. A lot of people tried unsuccessfully to induce me. I was posted to Ibadan mid 1975 and promoted to superintendent of customs. This was during the memorable days of General Muritala Mohammed, the nation's new military leader who had electrified the nation with his campaign for discipline, probity, hard work, patriotism, and dedication to duty. I admired General Mohammed and I tried to promote the same values and attitudinal change in our office. I was nicknamed Muritala Mohammed Jr. by my custom subordinates in Ibadan because they said I was behaving like him. Although I was second in command in Ibadan, I used to order latecomers to be locked out of their offices. I was sad to hear about General Mohammed's assassination. in on February 13, 1976, during a failed military coup. Some of those who were later implicated in the coup and killed were known to me, but I did not know they were involved in a coup plot. Shortly after the failed coup, I was transferred to Kano in 1976. So now this next subsection is making money. So making money, I recognized very early in life that I have a good nose for business. In 1974, I applied for and obtained a federal staff housing loan. The loan, which amounted to 31,000 naira, was the equivalent of my salary for 5 years. I was granted a plot of land by the Gongola state government at Yola Government Reserve Area, GRA. I hired a foreman and I began building my first house. With close personal supervision, the bungalow was completed on time and to my taste. I rented it out immediately. The rent I collected in advance on the house was substantial enough for me to purchase a second plot of land. I built my second house there and rented it out. I continued to plow back the rent into the building of new houses, and within a few years, I had built 8 houses in choice areas of Yola. I also built a new house for my mother and rebuilt the old mud house I bought her in Ganye when I was a 15-year-old student. Property investment can be very rewarding. It is safe and the returns are high depending on the location. Kaduna, for instance, was a good place to invest in property before the emergence of Abuja. I built my first house in Kaduna with rent from other properties. I bought 6 more plots and built residential houses and rented them out to individuals and institutions. Of all the businesses into which I would venture, the most successful and most lucrative would be a small oil service company I established with an Italian businessman in the early 1980s. I met Volpi. I met Gabriel Volpi when he was working at Apapa Port in 1982. The Genoa-born Italian Volpi was a director in MED Africa, a shipping company. Volpi suggested we go into oil and gas logistics. He knew Nigeria's future was in oil and gas. We registered the Nigeria Container Service, Nicotes, operating from a container office at Apapa Port. I was not involved in the running of the company. Nicotes relocated later to the Federal Lighter Terminal in Port Harcourt when the big business began to grow. The company, now known as Intel Integrated and Logistics Services, has grown into a multi-billion naira business, providing 15,000 jobs in Nigeria and other African countries and paying hefty dividends to its shareholders. So now the next subsection, our mother's death. My mother, Aisha Kende, died suddenly of a heart attack in 1984. I was in Lagos where I had been posted as the customs area administrator in charge of Muritala Mohammed Airport in Ikeja. Lamido Aliyu Mustafa summoned me home and broke the sad news to me in his palace. I wept like a child. She was hale and hearty when we last saw a week earlier. A week earlier. So, the next subsection, a matter of principle. A few months before my mother's death, soldiers had overthrown the civilian administration of Shehu Shagari on December the 31st, 1983. Major General Muhammadu Buhari became the new head of state. As part of its monetary policies, the Buhari government introduced new naira notes in April 1984. The policy was aimed at halting the illegal speculative trading of naira outside the shores of Nigeria. A time limit was imposed within which old notes could be turned into new ones. The government agencies at the nation's borders, sea, and airport were instructed to screen all bags and containers entering the country to ensure old naira notes were not being smuggled into the country. A first class traditional ruler and a returning Nigerian diplomat had arrived from Saudi Arabia with several bags. My officers at the airport in Lagos were not allowed to search the bags. The duty officers reported the incident in writing. I did not know how a newspaper got wind of it. The Guardian, a Lagos based newspaper, reported on its front page on June the 10th, 1984, that passenger with 53 suitcases leave airport unchecked. The incident became a scandal and the government was forced to set up an administrative panel of inquiry to determine why due process was not followed. The government was clearly embarrassed by the incident, and rather than punish those who flouted its directive that all bags be searched, it began to look for scapegoats. They mounted pressure on me to deny that the incident ever happened. I was threatened and intimidated. I vowed to surrender my uniform and quit the custom rather than lie. The federal government would later declare that the controversial 53 suitcases contained the personal effects of the traditional ruler, the returning ambassador, and members of their families. The government added that those who intimidated and threatened custom officers on duty on that day at the airport had been reprimanded. Some government officials wanted me sacked for not covering up their mess, but Finance Minister Ono Oluwapo Sholeye, who supervised the Department of Customs and Excise, said I should be left alone. Sholeye did not know me. He acted on the basis of the facts before him. He said it would be unfair to punish me for doing my job and for standing by my officers. He was also swayed by my impeccable service record. No queries, no sanctions. My file was filled with commendations for meeting and exceeding revenue targets at the different posts I had headed. A passion for learning. I have always, so that's this another subsection. I have always had a passion for education. In 1988, my second wife, Ladi, and I registered a limited liability company called ABTI Zahan, formed from the first letters of the names of our children. Uh, we established the ABTI Nursery and Primary School in Yola in 1992. We later set up ABTI Academy, an elite high school with boarding facilities modeled after the British public school. It was followed by ABTI American University, now American University of Nigeria Yola. It provides American style university education to students. Nothing gives me more joy and fulfillment in life than my modest contribution to the improvement of education in Nigeria. So that's that. Now, political life, and with a subheading meeting Yadua. While in my office one day, I was informed that Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, the retired Major General and former deputy to Obasanjo, was waiting to see me. Yar'Adua wanted a license to import beans from Niger Republic for sale in Nigeria. I told him that he would have to write an application to President Ibrahim Babangida for the license. Yar'Adua thanked me and left. Babangida approved his application. Yar'Adua imported the beans from Niger Republic, sold them and made good money. He felt he needed to show appreciation to me for assisting him. I was happy to see him again when he visited me, and happier still to know that his business had gone well. He offered me a token of appreciation, but I declined, saying it was unnecessary. I was just doing my job. Yar'Adua was highly impressed. In an organization known for its endemic corruption and unethical deals, he was happy to find one decent officer. From that day, a friendship developed. So the next subsection going into politics. When I joined the customs 20 years earlier, I had drawn a graph anticipating my career progression from cadet to director of customs by age of 40. I told myself that if by the time I was 40, I was not the head of the organization, I would quit. I retired at 43 as a deputy director on April the 30th, 1989. I paid the mandatory 3 months' salary in lieu of notice to the government. A year before my retirement, I had started attending political meetings at Yar'Adua's house in Ikoyi, Lagos. Look, you are good. You relate well with people. I think you will make a good politician. Why don't you join me in politics? Shehu Musa Yar'Adua said to me one day. That was how it all started. The Yar'Adua group, as we came to be known, wanted to build a bridge across the old fault lines of ethnic, religion, and region. In 1989, the Babangida administration finally lifted the ban on party politics. The Yar'Adua group immediately unveiled its political association, the People's Front of Nigeria (PFN), which had the pursuit of justice, peace, and service as its motto and people first as its slogan. At its first national convention in June 1989, Farouk Abdul Aziz, a medical doctor from the then Kwara State, was elected chairman, while a woman, Titi Ajanoku, was elected national secretary. Six of us represented the then Gongola state at the convention. I was elected one of the national vice chairmen of the party. I was also in charge of setting up the party structures in the southeast, where I already had a network of friends and business associates. Yar'Adua and I paid the initial expenses of the PFN. I took PFN to Gongola State. It was the first political association to be launched in the state when the ban on politics was lifted. I was the party's sole financier in the state. My contributions to my immediate community had earned me a lot of goodwill and support. Of the 13 political associations formed at the time, the PFN was the most organized and disciplined. Yet on October the 7th, 1989, President Babangida announced that his Armed Forces Ruling Council had decided not to register any of the associations because, as he put it, the associations were set up by the same old discredited politicians who must never be allowed back in power. He disbanded the 13 associations and created and funded two new parties, the Social Democratic Party (SDP) and the National Republican Convention (NRC). The SDP, he said, was a little to the left in terms of the ideological orientation, while the NRC was a little to the right. He asked politicians to join either of the two, while we in the Yar'Adua group decided to join the SDP, the party considered closer to the PFN in ideological orientation. The parties were formally launched in Abuja on October the 7th, 1989. I was one of the delegates from Gongola State. I was elected to the 1989 Constituent Assembly. So then the next subsection to be a governor. On August the 27th, 1991, the Babangida administration created 9 new states. Gongola State was broken into Adamawa and Taraba states. The SDP governorship primary in Adamawa State was held in November 1991. 6 people contested with me, including Bala Takaya, a former political science lecturer at the University of Jos. The primary took place amidst allegations that the state party executive were solidly behind Bala Takaya. Voting was relatively peaceful and orderly. The result was, however, disputed. I was declared winner, but Bala Takaya and his supporters protested. It was amidst this chaos that in December 1991, the Buhari administration announced the cancellation of 9 state primary election results, including that of Adamawa State. Takaya and I were also disqualified from contesting the upcoming governorship election. The former state chairman of the party, Boss Mustafa, emerged the winner of a fresh governorship primary. He had 2 weeks to convince the people of Adamawa State to vote for him. Apart from the short time available for campaign, Mustafa's chances were also weakened by the unresolved internal bickering in the party. So it was not surprising that the candidate of the rival NRC, Saleh Michika, won the December 14, 1991 governorship election. So the next subsection to be president, Yadua and 12 other so-called banned politicians were arrested and detained on December the 2nd, 1991 for participating in politics despite being banned. He was released on December the 20th, 1991 after 17 days in detention. He was freed to participate in politics again. The government said, we, his associates, persuaded him to join the race for the presidency. He declared his interest on February the 25th, 1992 at City Hall, Lagos. He was one of the 50 presidential aspirants of the 2 parties that participated in the 6 zone presidential primaries from May the 2nd to June the 20th, 1992. I was Yar'Adua's campaign coordinator. I had no doubt in my mind that he would have made a good president. He had a vision and he knew how to bring good people together to achieve his goals. A 3 stage party primary was introduced beginning in September 1992. By the end of the first round, Yar'Adua had emerged the frontrunner, beating the prominent politicians in their strongholds. The Babangida administration cashed in on the unfounded allegations of rigging, thuggery, and bribery and cancelled the primary results on November the 17th, 1992. All 23 presidential aspirants were also banned. The executive of the 2 parties were dissolved. A new system of presidential primary was announced. The handover date from the military to civilian rule was extended to August the 17th, 1993. With Yar'Adua banned, the group needed someone that its member could rally round. My influence, hard work, and selfless contribution to the Yar'Adua group, as well as my loyalty to Yar'Adua and my youthfulness, I was then 43 years old, counted in my favor. My closeness to Tafida, as I used to call him, also meant that I would inherit both his goodwill and his ill will. I knew that those who did not want Yar'Adua to become president could also stop me, but I was not deterred. I decided to run on the same ideas and vision that Yar'Adua had espoused during his candidacy. a strong, united, democratic, and prosperous Nigeria. Babagana Kingigwe, a former member of the Yadua group, who became SDP chairman because of the group's support, was also vying for the party's presidential ticket. So was newcomer Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, a wealthy businessman and a newspaper publisher. I contested and won the SDP presidential primary in Adamawa State in March 1993. Moshood Abiola, 55 years old, and Babagana Kingigbe, 48, had also won in their respective states. Although 27 of us from various states converged in Jos in March 1993 to contest the SDP presidential ticket at the National Convention of the party. To stop King Gigbe, whom we all had betrayed, to stop King, pardon me, to stop King Gibe, whom we all believed had betrayed our group, the Yadua group resolved to negotiate with Abiola. We would support Abiola's candidacy for the presidency in return for making me his running mate. We met Abiola and his key advisors and agreed to go to the Just Convention to push for an Abiola Atiku ticket. Thereafter, we would harmonize our campaign structures and finances. At the end of the first ballot, at the end, thereafter, we would harmonize our campaign structures and finances. At the end of the first ballot, Abela came first with 3,617 votes. King Gigbe came a close second with 3,225 votes. I came third with 2,066 votes. We met with Abiola again. We agreed that I should step down for Abiola in the final round of the votings. I agreed to subordinate my personal ambition for the sake of democracy. I was ready for a I was ready for a personal sacrifice that could end military rule in Nigeria. In the two-way race between Abiola and King Gigbe, Abiola triumphed with 2,683 votes to King Gigbe's 2,456 votes. However, Abiola refused to honor the agreement to make me his running mate. He picked Babagana King Gigbe. Yar'Adua was angry over Abiola's betrayal. I knew it would be difficult to persuade him to support Abiola again. I was concerned about our party. Without the support of Yar'Adua Group, the SDP could lose the presidential election to the NRC, whose Bashir Tofa, then 46, was generally thought to be inexperienced. Knowing that Shehu Yar'Adua's father and former military ruler Olusegun Obasanjo were the two people in the world that Yar'Adua could not refuse, I went to see Obasanjo at his Ota farm to ask him to convince Yar'Adua not to withdraw his support for Abiola. I said that Yar'Adua Group needed to work closely with Abiola to defeat the reactionary forces in the upcoming election and to get Babangida out of office. Obasanjo promised to talk to his former deputy. He did. And the Yar'Adua Group went on to support Abiola, who won the June 12 election. But the Babangida administration annulled the election midway into the vote count. We were all sad and angry about the annulment. We were tired of the endless transition, but we could not leave the ship of state adrift. We began consulting other political groups. In the end, a compromise was reached to form an interim national government with corporate chieftain Ernest Shonekan as head. The ING was sacked 3 months later by General Sani Abacha, the defense minister. Nigeria once again returned to full military rule. Okay, hold on. Okay, so Nigeria once again returns to full military rule. Political crisis is the next subsection. So, political crisis. A little over 6 months into his administration, Abacha gathered politicians in Abuja to fashion yet another constitution. I was elected by my people to represent them at the Constituent Assembly. Shehu Yadua was also an elected delegate from Katsina State. The conference began in June 1994 with 273 delegates, including 96 appointees of the government. In the middle of its proceedings, I was informed that Abacha wanted to see me. When I met him, Abacha told me he would like me to work with him. He said I should support his political program and advised me to dump Yadua. I said Yadua was my friend and that he should not try to tear us apart. I said I was my own man and that I could take decisions of my own. Abacha was not impressed. He asked me to go and think about it. By March 1995, Abacha began to move against opponents of his government. Yadua was the first on his list. He was arrested and detained on March the 9th, 1995 for daring to recommend a terminal date for the Abacha government. General Obasanjo was also arrested. Days after their arrest, Abdul Salami Abubakar, Chief of Defense Staff, addressed a press conference in Lagos during which he disclosed that 29 officers and civilians had been arrested in connection with the coup plot. Suspects were tortured and forced to confess their role in the coup and to implicate innocent men such as Obasanjo and Yar'Adua. A sham trial was staged. Yar'Adua was sentenced to death and Obasanjo to life imprisonment. In an Independence Day broadcast on October the 1st, 1995, Abacha announced the commutal of 13 of the death sentences to various terms of imprisonment. Obasanjo's life sentence was reduced to 15 years, whilst Yar'Adua's death sentence was reduced to 25 years. This was in response to pressure from two this was in response to pressure from a coalition of journalists, human rights activists, pro-democracy campaigners, and the international community, including the Pope. I visited Kirikiri as often as I could to see Yadua with Inua Baba, the Plateau State-born personal assistant to Yadua. In detention, Yadua was more concerned about the future of the country than about his own life. He feared that Abacha would throw the country into chaos. He was later transferred to Port Harcourt and Abakaliki prisons. Abacha was not satisfied keeping Yadua in jail and intimidating me. He was determined to cripple our businesses as well. He seized our most lucrative businesses, Nicotis, and renamed it Intel, Integrated and Logistic Services. Yadua and I were removed from the companies as shareholders. My residence in Kaduna was attacked by unknown gunmen in May 1995. Six policemen and one guard died in that attack. It is still a miracle to me how my wife Titi, our son Adamu, and I escaped unhurt. Going into exile is the next subheading. Following the bloody attack in Kaduna, my family and friends persuaded me to leave the country for a while. Abacha's security agents trailed me everywhere in their unmarked cars and trademark dark glasses. My telephone lines were bugged. I had to sneak out at night to meet people. My life under Abacha was horrible. The State Security Service SSS seized my international passport just as I was making plans to travel outside the country to cool off and to seek the support of some political and business leaders in Europe and the United States for the democratic struggle in Nigeria. I obtained another passport in the name of Atiku Akojoli with the assistance of friends within the security forces at the airport. I was smuggled into a London bound flight directly from the tarmac. I arrived in London late 1995. I made several unsuccessful efforts to reach the British Foreign Office. The government of Prime Minister John Major was, as usual with the British, a bit too cautious in its dealings with the Nigerian opposition. From London, I linked up with Jackie Faris, who had worked as a consultant on the polling and political strategy with the Shehu Yadua presidential campaign in 1992. Through her, I was able to re-establish contacts with former Atlanta Mayor Andrew Young. He promised to talk to my contacts he rather promised to talk to his contacts at the State Department in Washington to get me an appointment. While in the United States, I also re-established contact with Jennifer Ewe Giora, the television journalist I had known as a friend in Lagos since 1982. She was then living in Maryland. Jennifer and I later married and had Abdul Malik, Zara, and Faisal. Jennifer took me to some of the contacts Young and Faris had arranged for me in Washington. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Susan Rice, received me warmly in her office. I briefed her on the political situation in Nigeria and commended the Clinton administration for supporting the democratic struggle in Nigeria. I pleaded with the administration to press Abacha to free political prisoners such as Yar'Adua and Obasanjo and restore democratic rule. Rice expressed delight in seeing me and promised the Clinton administration's commitment to the restoration of democracy in Nigeria. So Yar'Adua's death is the next subheading. I wept like a baby on December the 8th, 1997, when I was informed that Shehu Musa Yar'Adua had died in Abakaliki prison. He was just 54. Yar'Adua had transformed Nigerian politics with his organizational skills, analytical mind, and his uncommon gift as a strategist. I lost a brother, a mentor, a confidant, and a friend in Yar'Adua. Death of Abacha and Abiola is the next subheading. Then, on June 8, 1998, Abacha died suddenly of a heart attack in Abuja at the age of 54. Chief of Defense Staff Abdul Salami Abubakar became the new head of state. 1 month after Abacha's death, Abiola also died suddenly in detention. General Abdulsalami Abubakar read the national mood well. He released political detainees and announced a short transition to civil rule program. He also began to look into previous rights violations. I petitioned him about the seizure of intels from Yadua and I. He set up a committee to look into it, and the committee promptly recommended that the company be returned to us, the rightful owners, from governor to vice president. As soon as the military government announced its transition program, the People's Democratic Movement (PDM), as the Yadua group came to be known, immediately convened in Lagos. We resolved to liaise with other political associations with the hope of setting up a strong national party that will promote unity and stability and serve as a bulwark against military incursion into politics. On August the 19th, 1998, the PDM and other groups came together to form the People's Democratic Party PDP as a credible, nationwide, people oriented, and principled political party enjoying the widest support throughout the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I led a small group to identify a presidential candidate from the southwest that we could support. The Abubakar government sent an emissary to inform us that they wanted Olusegun Obasanjo. In the end, our group agreed to support Obasanjo's candidacy. A contact team was set up with Lawal Keita, Sunday Afolabi, Ango Abdullahi, Titi Ajanoku, and I as members. We were convinced that Obasanjo would make a good president. After Obasanjo agreed to contest the PDP presidential primaries, I went back to Adamawa to realize my lifelong dream of governing my state. I was unanimously picked as the PDP candidate for Adamawa State. Bonnie Haruna was my running mate. I won the January 9, 1999 governorship election, defeating my perennial rival, Bala Takaya of the All Nigeria People's Party. The PDP held its national convention in Jos in January 1999, and Obasanjo defeated former Vice President Alex Ekweme to become the party's candidate. He chose me as his vice presidential candidate. I was quite surprised as I had not shown any interest in the position. I wanted to govern my state, but that was not God's will. Our ticket was sold to the electorate as a team of two great personalities, the convergence of two generations, and the bridging of South Christian and North Muslim Gulf. Obasanjo went on to win the February the 27th, 1999 presidential election, defeating former secretary to the government Olufalaye, who ran on the AD/ANPP ticket, ANPP joint ticket. Obasanjo and I were sworn into office as president and vice president, respectively, at a colorful ceremony in Abuja on May the 29th, 1999, reinventing Nigeria. For 8 years, our administration worked assiduously to deepen our young democracy, unite our diverse people, professionalize the armed forces, re-establish our country as a great and respected member of the international community, and reform our economy to become more productive, diverse, and globally competitive. Our reform package includes fuel price deregulation, low and stable interest and inflation rates, privatization of ineffective government owned enterprises, enthroning a culture of transparency and accountability, monetization of the benefits and entitlements of public sector workers, setting up a new pension scheme, and growing the revenue base of the government through a fair and equitable, more efficient, and easier to comply with tax system. In 2001, our administration successfully auctioned mobile phone licenses, and by the time we left office in 2007, more than 70 million Nigerians had phones compared to the 400,000 landlines that the state owned Nigerian telecommunications company Nitel paraded throughout its existence. In one of the most courageous and ambitious privatization programs ever embarked upon in recent times, we sold off scores of unprofitable and inefficient public enterprises such as banks, insurance companies, hotels, newspapers, cement, oil and petrol, chemical, and fertilizer companies. First, we relieved the government of the unnecessary burden of running businesses. We then reinforced government's attention on making laws and good policies and creating a conducive atmosphere for business and creating a conducive atmosphere for businesses to flourish. Most of the privatized firms are today being run profitably and efficiently by their new owners, creating more jobs and delivering quality products and services. One important achievement of our administration was in the banking sector reform. In 2005, we raised the minimum capital base of banks from 2 billion naira to 25 billion naira in order to make the Nigerian bankers in order to make the Nigerian banks stronger, healthier, and globally competitive. The policy saw the number of banks operating in Nigeria drop from 89 to 25. Also our administration cleaned up Abuja, restored its master plan, computerized the land registry, and halted uncontrolled developments in the Federal Capital Territory. By the time we left office in 2007, Abuja had become the pride of the nation as a beautiful, clean, safe, and efficient world class city. To ensure that the increased revenue accruing to the government benefited the greatest number of people, the Obasanjo administration set up the Independent Corruption Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC) and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC). Both the ICPC and EFCC waged a vigorous and sustained war against corruption, money laundering, advance fee fraud, and other economic and financial crimes. In a related development, our administration also introduced new procurement system with emphasis on due process, open and transparent conduct of government business, as well as adherence to public service rules and financial regulations. In October 2005, our administration successfully negotiated a deal with our external creditors that saw Nigeria pay off a total of $14.48 billion in return for the cancellation of our remaining $18 billion debt. Also, we set up the Debt Management Office to review and restructure Nigeria's debt. Our economic reforms led to massive growth in both the formal and informal economy. By the time we left office in 2007, our economy was ranked 31st in the world in terms of gross domestic product, which was estimated to be about $500 billion. Estimates include both formal and informal economy. It became the second biggest economy in Africa. So there you are, Atiku then, in his own words, narrating his own life. So there you are, that is Atiku in his own words. So now to this next space, and we make this the last story we read out. EFCC operatives invade Benga Daniels Conference Hotel, strip, rob, and torture guests. Armed EFCC agents on Saturday night stripped, robbed, and shot repeatedly to traumatize guests at conference hotels, part of a luxury accommodation chain run by former Governor Benga Daniels in Abeokuta, witnesses have said. The The officers reportedly arrived just before midday on Saturday and operated well into the early hours of Sunday morning, witnesses said. They forcibly broke into guests' rooms unannounced and stripped them of any dignity, correspondents heard. In a description that matches the agency's recent descent into conduct bereft of civil liberty considerations. Scores of guests were said to have been arrested during the operation, many of whom were accused of being internet fraudsters, even though no outstanding warrants were presented against them. An award ceremony that was going on at the hotel was disrupted, but additional details of the raid remain unclear. They accused my friend Emmanuel of being a Yahoo boy and stripped him and his girlfriend, a witness told correspondents on Sunday morning. They were also robbed of their money and phones before being badly tortured. Emmanuel, whose last name was not provided, was freed at the scene with his girlfriend. He was not taken away, but we don't know how we can get his phones and money back, the friend said, who witnessed the incident. A video that surfaced online included sounds of gunshots and women scampering for safety, fearing that they might be fatally shot by rogue officers attached to the anti-graft agency. The EFCC has faced widespread condemnation for similar attacks on hotel guests in recent weeks. Officers have been found to raid lodgers and revelers at hotels and nightclubs. Officers have been found to raid uh, lodgers and revelers at hotels and nightclubs across uh, let me try that one more time. Officers have been found to raid lodgers and revelers at hotels and nightclubs across the southern parts of the country, often without a warrant or acceptable degree of transparency. In mid September, correspondents reported how EFCC agents broke into hotels in Abeokuta, causing damages to guests and assets. A woman narrated how she was sexually harassed by the agent who dipped hands into her you know what and confiscated her iPhone. The EFCC said its officers were professional throughout the operation. Governor Dapo Abiola has repeatedly expressed anger over the latest raid, which residents say could further plunge the state's economy into distress as guests often avoid previously raided hotels. Mr. Daniel, who was governor of the state from 2003 to 2011, has for years owned conference hotels, has for years owned Conference Hotel in Shagamu, Ijebu-Ode, and Abeokuta. Loyalists of the governors repeatedly stormed the hotel. Uh, Loyalists of the governor reportedly stormed the hotel to frustrate the EFCC operation, a witness said, but it was unclear whether or not they were successful. Agents have in the past avoided raiding the hotel to avoid political fallout, but town residents said it was only a matter of time before an invasion happened, since Conference Hotel had been one of the only hotels standing unbreached by EFCC agents in the state capital. Correspondents approached the EFCC for comment on Sunday morning. Mr. Daniel did not return a request seeking comments about the operation on Sunday. So essentially, they're just launching the EFCC against the southern states. So that's just it. So that was it. That's essentially the life and times of Atiku Abubakar. There's no one here to take it on, so I'll just acknowledge Alexander's super chat, and I'll shut it there. Alexander super chats to say, Babangida, see what I mean. He single-handedly destroyed the once great country. I loathe that man. So he loathes the man, Alexander, and he super chats to just assert exactly that. So that has been the session. So I will leave it there. Carry the conversation on with you in the comment section, but here I say peace.